The agenda is set. I'm Brent Goff in Berlin. It's time to talk. Putin, the peace broker, is Russia's president suddenly the go-to good guy? U.S. policy on Syria. Does the world's only superpower want to give up its global police job? And the final stretch of campaigning. What's at stake in Sunday's German election? Well, welcome to the show, everyone. I have invited three people today to talk, argue, and pry apart these headlines. My first guest is Hans Pfeiffer. He is one of DW's veteran political correspondents here in Berlin, and Hans is going to be our insider today on the German election. Hans, it's good to have you on the show. My second guest is a law professor from Northwestern University in Chicago. I'm happy to welcome to the show David Schaefer. He is on the show with us. He's in Berlin this fall, writing on U.S. foreign policy. And David's going to tell us why Obama and the U.S. have not lost credibility in the Syrian crisis. And my next guest spends a lot of time in front of the Russian embassy here in Berlin. He organizes protests against corruption in his home country. I'm happy to welcome to the show Ilya Rivkin. Ilya, you are not a fan of Vladimir Putin. We know that. Do you think that the Syrian crisis, though, has drawn out a completely different side of him? I mean, is he headed for a Nobel Peace Prize now?
I think it's possible that he got a Nobel Peace Prize for what he does, because it's such an absurd situation. And
you really think he could get a Nobel Peace Prize?
Not really.
You do not?
Not really.
Okay, good. All right, that's the Russian irony here that we have to pick up on.
That's just the irony.
Okay.
Because on these chemical weapons, on this rocket,
yes,
was found Cyrillic letters.
Cyrillic letters?
Yes, Cyrillic letters. And
so you're saying they were made by the Russians, the weapons that have been found in Syria? Okay.
Yes.
All right. But those weapons, though, could have been stolen. We don't know, right?
Yeah, it could be stolen. I don't. But it's also a responsibility of Russia or of Russian state to keep chemical weapons.
To keep it a secret. But I mean, the rebels could have been involved in that too, right? I mean, the rebels also could have some type of guilt in this.
Yes, I'm not. I don't know who used it, but the fact is that these chemical weapons came from Russia.
But you still think that Putin has a lot to answer for. David, what do you think? What's the word on Putin now? I mean, he's looking very good on the world stage.
Well, he is, but you never want to underestimate Vladimir Putin. He has a long history of the Cold War as part of his background in the KGB. He's been very methodical in the way he has ruled Russia over the last, 12, 13, 14 years, right, in the sense that he's always looking for the advantage that Russia can seize in what I would call sort of the post-Cold War struggle with the United States.
Which we obviously are still in. Would you agree with that, Hans?
Yeah, I would agree with, of course. And I think from the German perspective, Germans are kind of reluctant about the situation now that there is no military action at the moment. So no matter what the diplomatic deal is or what the intention of Vladimir Putin is, that it's kind of good not to have a military action at the moment, because Germany really feared to get into that in the region.
Yeah, right, the Germans are afraid of military action, but the big question that people are asking right now is, what is Vladimir Putin up to? Suddenly, Russia appears to be paving a possible road to peace in Syria. Last week's plan for Moscow to put Syria's chemical weapons under international control did more than shock the world. It changed the discussion about Syria's future. Now some people are daring to ask if peace in the near term could be possible. Peace made not by the UN or the US, but by Vladimir Putin.
No one has ever accused Vladimir Putin of being soft. After the former KGB officer took over Russia a decade after the collapse of the Soviet Union, he moved swiftly to crush a rebellion in renegade Chechnya. The Russian president is also not known for tolerating internal dissent. During his terms at the country's helm, Putin has cracked down on dissenting voices and press freedom within Russia. He's also supported allies abroad, like the Assad regime in Syria, that do the same. Much of the Russian president's mystique and popularity at home is built on a macho image carefully cultured and showcased on national television. Now he sees the opportunity to take on a new role on the world stage, that of international mediator. But can Russia's tough guy president really turn into Vladimir Putin, the peacemaker?
I mean, that's what people are saying. Putin is the peacemaker. Now, Ilya, you have to give him credit. He definitely stole the thunder away from Obama with this plan for the chemical weapons.
Yes, he did someone good thing for Obama, but I don't know if it's a good decision for Syrian people, because he stopped a war that where will involve the American army, but the civil war in Syria goes on. And
do you think he cares about the welfare of the Syrian people?
I think he cares about military base in Tarsus. It's only one Russian military base in Mediterranean. And also...
So he cares about Russia's military interest. Right. I mean, is that what we're looking at here? Are we looking at a realpolitiker here who he's not really worried about all of these refugees? He's worried basically about his image.
Well, I think that's correct. You know, I think it's premature to call anyone a peacemaker yet with respect to Syria. Far too premature, certainly for Vladimir Putin. This is a man who, I think, tries to seize every opportunity he can to trump the United States. That doesn't mean in a necessarily sort of aggressive, destructive sense. But I think he's very cognizant of what the image of Russia was during the Soviet years. He wants to restore that image as a major power in the world, and he'll take advantage of situations to do that. But sometimes those situations will actually be beneficial for larger objectives that the United States and other countries might want to join in. But I don't think it's for the purpose of world peace that Vladimir Putin actually undertakes his initiatives.
Is it beneficial to the world, Hans, that people are now saying Putin has proposed peace to prevent Obama from going to war?
Well, it's a long way to peace in Syria, so it might be beneficial. We have to wait for that. But I would say if there would be real peace in Syria and if there would be a change in the situation for the better of the people of Syria, it would be beneficial. But I agree that it's not the intention of Vladimir Putin to be the world peacemaker. It's more about to be kind of a world ruler and to be on top in the old circle of the old elite of people who deal with the problems in the world. And it's all about power.
Is that what it is, Ilya?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
But I would also say don't understate the importance of Sergei Lavrov in this entire equation. In fact, he might be the one who in the end is viewed as the real actor on behalf of Russia to cut a deal not only with the United States, but to follow through with that deal in terms of enforcing it with Syria. Lavrov may be the sort of the operative that actually gets this done. And I'm not so certain that history will conclude that it was Putin who had the vision for this particular outcome in Syria.
What kind of vision, what vision does Putin have?
Well, I don't know what that is. He's a man of considerable narcissistic character. He's also a man who is very tactfully leading Russia back to a position of major power status, but without necessarily the assets to back it up in terms of military, etc.
What do you think, Ilya? What's Putin's vision for the world?
Putin told that for him is the breakdown of Soviet Union the biggest geopolitical disaster. And his idea is to restore the might that Soviet Union has, or is a kind of revanchist politics that he want to restore might of Soviet or Tsarist empire.
So he's still fighting the Cold War.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's a new front line. I mean, Syria is the new front line of that Cold War, but we've had other front lines since the end of the Cold War, whether it be the former Yugoslavia, Kosovo, Afghanistan, Iraq, where Russia has countered the West.
Yeah.
So it's a new battlefield, but it's one that I think Putin is very comfortable with because his entire professional background has been to play within that battlefield.
Right. I mean, he is a KGB man, or he was a KGB man.
In Germany.
Yeah, here in Germany.
I think, well, he's one of those politicians who did not arrive in the new structures of a globalized world. So he made divisions in the world between Russia, between the United States, and all those old blocs and countries. But he's not thinking in networks or in globalized structures, which modern governments do or should do. And well,
he's like a dinosaur. Well, I mean, it's like he looks like a dinosaur. I mean, you were saying, Ilya, that he is always playing on these deep conservative values, the Orthodox Church, for example, the KGB working together, something that Stalin would have maybe, you know, in a back room also supported. I mean, when is he going to come into the 21st century?
I think that in 21st century is revival also of some archaical or old ideologies like political Islamism and so on. And for example, someone speaker of Russian Orthodox Church, the speaker of the Russian Orthodox Church, he says that the government or political of Iran is good.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have a good track record with things like Iran or North Korea as far as bringing peace to those situations. Let me ask you all, what's going to happen next year in Sochi? Is that going to be a public relations disaster for Putin? Because we see already in Berlin there are protests, one after another, against the anti-gay law and against the Olympics being held in Sochi. So are we seeing a tsunami coming?
Well, I don't think the United States will in any way pull out of those Olympics. I mean, we've done that before, and it's a bridge that a lot of people didn't like crossing. I don't think we're going to cross that bridge again. But I do think from the United States point of view, there will be a very affirmative affirmation of civil rights and of other issues that we are at difference with the Russian government in terms of what public officials say, what they say on the ground in Sochi, what the athletes themselves may say as athletes. They will probably come with symbolic references to gay rights with them. And some of them are gay.
Yeah, some of them are. I mean, what do you say about this, Ilya? I mean, don't you think that Sochi is a time bomb that's going to explode in Putin's face?
Exactly. I think that, and not only gay rights, but also Sochi is a country of genocide of Cherkessian people, and now many thousands of Cherkessians want repatriate from Syria back to Russia, back to this Black Sea region, and Putin don't let these people return. That's one more problem.
I'm not very confident that we will see that many protests in TV. There might also be the protests in Russia, but because it's so important for Russia to make success out of these games, and people, well, the audience, the people who watch the Olympic Games, they are pretty fast in forgetting about all the problems. And this is what we've seen in Peking, where there have also been protests, and there also have been athletes who, in advance, before the game started, said, well, we have to take care about human rights.
We didn't see arrests taking place even in Beijing with the Olympics. And what we could see now in Sochi, we could see people on the street being arrested by the police for doing something.
But wait till the game started. You won't see them.
Maybe a kinder, gentler
where there are international cameras and international reporters, that won't be the places, well, just around the stadiums.
I think there'll be some reporters who want to pursue that story
Of course,
there.
yeah, of course you can.
But nobody,
Anyway.
I think when the game started and after 1 week, like that's what we've seen here in Germany, everybody talks about the medals.
Yeah.
And it's getting pretty fast then. The athletes in advance, they say, well, let's talk about human rights. But when they're getting in danger of not, after 4 years of training, getting
Well,
the medal.
Let's wait for the first openly gay athlete to get the gold
Right.
medal.
All right, yeah, that's right. We'll see what
Will be
happens in
interesting.
Sochi. But let's move on and talk about the irony here. The world is talking about Russian President Putin whenever Syria is mentioned, but wasn't it U.S. President Obama who drew that red line? The Pentagon was ready a couple of weeks ago to flex the muscles that only a world police force can. But ask Americans about Syria today, and the majority will tell you that they want to stay out of the civil war. America, the superpower, is tired of picking up the slack when the rest of the world drops the enforcement ball. The age of diplomacy shared with the U.S., not always led by the U.S., may now be upon us.
12 years after the 9/11 attacks that led to wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, a majority of Americans say they're against involvement in another armed conflict. Barack Obama's address to the nation last week reflected that.
America's not the world's policeman. Terrible things happen across the globe, and it is beyond our means to right every wrong. But when, with modest effort and risk, we can stop children from being gassed to death and thereby make our own children safer over the long run, I believe we should act.
Many suspect Russia's proposal for Syria to give up its chemical weapons is just a plot to buy time for Assad, and the U.S. hasn't taken the possibility of a military strike off the table. But in the future, how much will the U.S. be able to accomplish with modest effort and risk? Is Washington going to rely more on diplomacy and less on military might?
What do you think, David? Are we looking at world police light now with Obama?
Well, essentially, you know, remember that President Obama, first of all, wants to get us out of wars, and he's been doing that with Iraq and Afghanistan. But at the same time, he's very attracted to a sort of stealth, light footprint approach to various military challenges. As opposed to the heavy footprint, he goes in and he sort of tiptoes in and tiptoes out with sophisticated technology. I mean, the whole drone attack issue, which we've much debated, right. But it is what he prefers. So the Syrian situation has presented him with an opportunity, frankly, for a limited strike if necessary. That is what he would, that would be a natural option for him to actually choose, as opposed to any sort of large-scale intervention. And there's a paradox in that because, you know, he also speaks of protecting civilian populations and of
which
atrocities, which you cannot really do with missile strikes. But it's his sort of small step approach, which means that enforcement under Obama is a very different concept.
I don't know if it's that simple. You know, the latest poll came out asking Americans about being the world police found that 2 in 5 Americans believe the United States has an obligation to punish foreign governments that deploy weapons of mass destruction to kill civilians. Only 2 in 5. A majority of Americans say we are not the enforcers. So there's an identity crisis right now. And the Russians, Ilya, Moscow loves that identity crisis, and the Germans,
well, I think,
aren't they terrified of that? They're losing their police officer.
I don't think that, well, I think that the Germans still think that when it comes to final decisions, there still is this policeman, the United States, and that because there are not that many alternatives, there are not that many, Europe is not the world's policeman, they're not ready for that. They have not a congruent politic in foreign policies like in Libya. And
right.
So I think, like if you see Germany or the German Chancellor, it's more waiting for American action, and we won't be. If America is not doing it, we won't do it.
But there's a changed reality now, which is that first of all, the reality is the United States continues to have the military assets that are indispensable to any effective intervention militarily anywhere in the world, airlift capabilities, etc. And other nations sometimes want to draw upon those assets. The French like to do so, for example, if they go into Mali. But I think under the Obama administration, there's been a tendency to say, yes, we want to maintain that asset base, but we want to deploy it with more sophistication. We want to deploy it with multilateral diplomatic support when possible. I think the interesting thing about Syria and the red line is that President Obama took us to a new place, which he said, let's enforce an international norm. We must enforce an international norm. We must enforce international law. Now that's a fairly bold new statement by an American president to say we're going to use military force to enforce international law.
That puts him at odds with Russia.
Yeah.
Yes. What I'm awaiting from Obama is more consistent politic, because now I don't understand what Obama really, if he has a vision for Syria and for Middle East. He start some very offensive.
Well, do you expect him, Ilya, though, is he supposed to have a clear vision for what happens to Syria?
Yes, because America is a superpower. And to be a superpower is also a responsibility. And America support Israel, and America have very close connections to Qatar and to Saudi Arabia, and so on. In this situation, America couldn't be unresponsible.
But I think he acts responsible, because we just talked about Putin, and I think we agree that Putin is using his power just to gain more power. And when we talk about the politics in Syria of the United States, well, I have the impression that they use their power to see for political solutions, for maybe also a better outcome for Syria. And so I think what Obama was doing is like it is, compared to the former government under George W. Bush, it is a change, because it is trying to make politics together in an international...
And it's a change because Obama doesn't think in terms of linear diplomacy. He deals with circumstances as they arise, and he does take the long-term view, so that if there are hills and valleys along the way to get to that long-term objective, I think he's prepared to accept that. He's also prepared sometimes to accept simply the criticism and the haranguing that comes his way, particularly by the Republicans, to get to that objective. On Syria, you know, diplomacy has proven to be complex, and yet, in the end, it may prove to get us to the right objective.
Okay.
And I would say one thing about the vision.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you always need a clear vision for what's going on in Syria in 10 or 20 years, but because you cannot plan that. And so that it might be useful, like where the German Chancellor was very successful in moving step by step, and to watch out carefully for what's going on. If you do a next step, what will happen then? And that it might be worthwhile, might be good.
Let me read to you something that's been written about Obama in Syria. By forgetting to first seek a peaceful, hopefully successful resolution to the Syrian problem, President Obama did not choose to play the chessboard nearly as clever as Vladimir Putin. A lot of people say that he missed his opportunity in Syria to earn the Nobel Peace Prize that he was given several years ago.
Well, I would take some issue with that. Remember, the United States, the United Kingdom, and France for 2 years have tried to move very assertive resolutions through the Security Council, and they've been blocked consistently in doing so. By Russia and China. So they've tried to approach this issue of the civil war and the atrocities in Syria in a multilateral approach, and they've been thwarted by doing so. Now, if you want to fault President Obama for not having taken a clearly, aggressive military approach to Syria over the last 2 years, you may do so. I mean, that is a fair argument, because there is a responsibility to try to protect those civilians. And he did draw a line diplomatically in that he has stated that he wants Assad to go.
But why, instead of invoking the chemical weapons ban in Syria, why didn't he come out and invoke the principle of collective self-defense, that we will not allow neighboring states like Turkey, Jordan, Israel to be threatened by a dictator who will throw out sarin gas?
Well, Brett, I would agree with you on that. I think that the better legal rationale for the use of force against the Syrian chemical weapons stocks is one of collective self-defense as opposed to enforcement of a legal norm, which has its great attractions. I mean, international lawyers, and I'm one of them, love that argument.
Right.
We'd love to see that institutionalized somehow. But under current international law, I think the far better rationale would be one of collective self-defense, whereby you have Turkey.
Well, why do you think, though, that Obama did not go for that? Because it seems almost like common sense.
Because first, there may be some difficulty with those countries in actually getting a formal request of that character, because it signals that that country itself considers itself to be in some sort of armed conflict with Syria to ask for assistance in collective self-defense. Now, I would argue that they should be able to overcome that concern easily within their societies.
All of these refugees. That's a reason right there.
And even yesterday, Turkey had to shoot down a Syrian helicopter that came across the border and intruded upon their territorial space. There have been so many examples of both shellings, of refugee flows, etc., where I would argue that neighboring countries are essentially under armed attack at this point because of the spillover of the civil war. So there's more than enough latitude to seek collective self-defense.
But before we move on, let me ask all of you, is Obama and his identity of what the United States is in the world, is he fighting right now the legacy of the George W. Bush doctrine?
Absolutely. And he will admit to that. I mean, I think he says it in so many different ways. He wants to get us out of wars as opposed to take us into wars. He does not, I don't know of a single speech where, like the George W. Bush speeches, where he talks about promoting democracy around the world. He approaches it very, very differently, that whole concept. So I think there is a dramatic difference between the two.
What do you think, Hans?
Well, I think it's not only Obama, it's also the Democratic Party. So we always point on one person, but there are many people in the administration who are with him, who share the same kind of approach to politics. And I think also in the Obama government administration, it's a lot about money as well, because the wars had been very expensive for the US, the crisis was deep, and the outcome of the wars we had in Afghanistan and Iraq is unclear, and it's very uncertain.
Has Germany been a really good friend to Obama as he tries to clean up the Bush mess? I mean, why hasn't Germany been more vocal in saying that this idea of a world where we have more alliances, where we do work together? Why isn't Germany a bigger cheerleader of that? Or do you think Germany could be a louder cheerleader? I mean, Germany and Russia are in bed with each other many times, and sometimes it looks very, very awkward.
But we have a different chancellor now, and Chancellor Merkel has a different approach to politics. It's what she calls equidistance to different governments, and no matter if it's Putin or Obama,
that's a cop-out. That's a cop-out, though, isn't it? I mean, doesn't it make sense for Germany to be more allied with the West, with the United States, than with the Russia that Ilya, of course, is fighting to change?
Well, if you listen to the speeches of Merkel, there is a big difference, because she criticizes openly Vladimir Putin when she visits him, and she's talking about human rights, and she also criticizes President Obama, but she's more careful about that. And I think that, I think they are closer allies than many people. Well, there's a lot about talking about Obama and Merkel. Do they have problems? Should she support it?
You know what I think the United States really would desire from Germany, and we get some of it, but is what I would call the soft diplomatic foot. Namely, when we need Germany at the UN to support something in the Security Council, whether it's a member or not at that point, when we need Germany in NATO, when we need Germany to support humanitarian efforts with refugees, and they do this substantially in this country, those kinds of soft diplomatic footprints are extremely important. And, you know, the United States, I've never heard of many arguments that, oh, we want the German army to march in with us, you know, to some location.
Yeah.
Sometimes we want them in Afghanistan to help with police, etc.
That's going to take us to our third topic today, and of course that's the election. A week from now, Germany may have a new chancellor and a new government, or maybe not. Voters go to the election box on Sunday, but poll after poll tells us don't expect much change. This election has been a major non-headliner so far, the great yawn, some have called it. Well, we want to wake up the sleeping public today. A lot is at stake. Germany is Europe's strongest country, and it calls the shots on many issues here. So on Sunday, voters here will be deciding the fate of the entire continent, and that is anything but a sleeper.
Opinion polls put Angela Merkel's Christian Democrats ahead in the run-up to Germany's parliamentary election. She says only her government can steer a stable course in Germany and Europe, and claims opposition plans would prove disastrous.
Businesses should be allowed to grow and create jobs. They shouldn't be crippled by tax hikes.
Voters in state elections in Bavaria last weekend handed conservatives there a decisive victory. That result has given a boost to Merkel in the final days of the campaign. But it was coupled with a poor showing for her coalition partners, the Free Democrats. If they do badly at the national level too, Merkel could be looking for a different party to share government. The opposition's Social Democrats have lagged behind throughout the campaign, not helped by a series of gaffes by Per Steinbrück, their candidate for chancellor. But some polls suggest it could be a close race at the finish. So will issues or personalities decide the German election?
Hans, how much personality has there been in this campaign?
Well,
I mean, come on.
yeah, we're not talking that much about parties, which was in the past always. In Germany, we don't vote the chancellor, we vote the parties who then vote in the parliament, the chancellor. But so it was a lot about personality in this campaign, because Chancellor Merkel is one of the most popular politicians in Germany, and she's much more popular than Per Steinbrück, the Social Democrat who wants to be chancellor. So there's much talking about the personalities, and not that much talking about the content.
Yeah, but there's just not a lot of talk, period, right? I mean, a lot of people just aren't interested. I mean, Angela Merkel, it's important to note, is the most popular politician in Germany. Yeah. Of all the politicians, everybody loves Angela Merkel.
But I think the reason for
it's
that
a runaway
is,
for her.
if you have a close look, we always talk about the persons in the front line. But if you look a little bit closer to the programs of the parties, no matter which coalition will govern in Germany, so of course, Chancellor Merkel will not govern by her own. Her party, the Conservatives, are not strong enough, so she has to look for a coalition partner. But no matter with whom she will govern, or no matter if the Social Democrats will govern with another party, there won't be, this is what I think, there won't be major differences in politics.
Yeah, because their platforms are relatively similar.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
Right. So we don't have a lot of competing ideas here.
That's right.
But you know, as an American, I am savoring this, because this is so rational, so calm, so policy-oriented. Yes. I heard that during the debate, there was a long discussion about pensions. This would never happen in the United States. It would always descend into some sort of lines of retort and accusations, and also veering away from hard policy discussions. So I think I want to give some credit to the Germans, actually. It's nice occasionally to have a boring election where maybe the fine-tuned issues of pension reform are at issue, but also where you have moments of some comedy. I noted, you know, with the Merkel, you're in good hands, and then I see a magazine cover with the with Steinbrück showing us the bad hand, and that was a nice way to sort of encapsulate whatever dichotomy there is between them.
Yeah, good and bad. Ilya, do you agree here that a boring election is a good election?
In the election, this election in Germany quite similar to election in Russia, because everybody knows who will be the next chancellor and which party got the greatest, the biggest percentage.
Right. But there's a little bit of difference between what's happening in Germany than in Russia. Come on.
Let me make one note, because I don't think that it's a boring election. Of course, no matter who will govern, it will be round about the same direction they will move in the future. We will take care the same way of the euro crisis. The relationship to the United States won't change, no matter if it's Angela Merkel or if it's Per Steinbrück. But it is not boring if you look to what the talking is about. So we were talking about minimum wages. Shall we have minimum wages in Germany? Shall we change this politics? Should there be more social security also for the poorer ones? How do we deal with this? So I think it also is a chance to talk about politics, and not only about these, like we have it in the US, between Tea Party and Democrats, with this just shouting and shouting with no outcome.
Well, there's more consensus here.
But I would say it is also different to Russia, because we are not talking about power, but we still talk about politics here in Germany, also in these election times.
It doesn't seem to be as destructive a political process in a campaign season here as one finds it in the United States. And that's what I find sort of relaxing about observing this particular election.
I mean, these are also issues of luxury, right? Talking about a minimum wage, talking about the pension plan. You're not talking about existential issues for the country. I mean, Germany is in a really good place now. Germany is the most popular country in the world right now. Hans, how does that feel? I mean, everyone loves Germany.
Yeah.
Why change?
It feels pretty comfortable, of course, because, and I think this is why the election of Chancellor Merkel is not in danger, because there is most people say that they are confident and that they are satisfied with the style Chancellor Merkel governs in, which was in this gesture of Per Steinbrück. He did some other gestures about. He was asked in the same photo series, what do you think about the way Angela Merkel handled the crisis? 1 very good and 10 very bad. And he said, well, not so good, but he made another sign on his back to show he's very confident. And he liked the style she managed the crisis. So
he likes her crisis management. Well, I mean, he was the finance minister.
He was the finance minister, and the Social Democrats supported the way they. Well, to be honest, they both handled the crisis together. It was not only Merkel, but...
But what about, things are incredibly good in Germany right now. And, I mean,
but let me...
there are economic problems, and there is growing poverty in the country. But because things seem to be going so good, does that create a level of complacency now? Isn't that why so many people say they're not interested in the election?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about this. If we have to be careful about calling these problems Germany has as luxurious problem, because people who live here, they don't know other countries, like also the United States. Their economical problems are luxury problems compared to the problems Africa has, but it's still a very deep, heavy problems the politics have to take care about. And we have problems here in Germany with poverty. And we have a growing problem with that. So it is the responsibility of the politicians to take care of this, and not only being very smooth about it all and say, okay, we can be happy and just go on. So
the Greek politicians, they don't hide it at all. They say she's a mean woman.
Yeah,
she says nothing and she's tough.
I think this is one problem of the government of Angela Merkel, that we were talking about Syria, we were talking about the relationship to Russia and the US, that Germany as a country, not only Merkel, is not very interested and concerned about the whole world. We don't want to be the world's policeman. We care about Europe because it affects us, and the Euro crisis was a big danger for Germany. But we are not much the revolutions in the Arab world, or what's going on in Syria.
Yeah, well, all politics is local. I mean, that's what people say everywhere. Politics is local.
But it's in fact, it is more than local because we are a strong economy with the deep boundaries to Asia, to Russia, to all over the world. So it's not only local. And I would say that Germany should learn what Obama administration is asking for, that we should think more in international terms, and we should.
Do you think the German voter is aware? I was in Portugal last week, and I talked to some people in Lisbon about what they think of Germany and the German government, and I heard only positive things. I heard a lot of people saying we need to be more like the Germans because at the end of the day, the Germans are in charge. You would never hear a German politician say that. We are in charge.
No, but I think this is also part of our history because Germany, it's still, even if it's so long ago, the Second World War and the time of national socialism here in Germany,
right,
we're a little bit afraid of this role of being in charge and of telling others, and we stepped down.
We're running out of time. We've got about a minute here. Let me ask all three of you. A week from now, if we were sitting here, who are we going to be talking about? Who will win? Ilya, I'll start with you. Who's going to be the winner next week? Who's going to be the chancellor?
Christian Democrats.
The Christian Democrats.
Yes.
And Angela Merkel will stay chancellor.
Yes.
All right. David, what would you say?
I think all the signs point towards that at this point, so yes.
Mm-hmm. Hans?
Christian Democrats and Angela Merkel.
And do you think that she will stay with the FDP?
I'm not sure.
You're not. That's a tough one to call, right?
I'm not sure because I'm not sure if they will gain enough votes.
All right. Well, the election is coming up next Sunday, and DW is the right address for the best coverage of the German election. Join me next Sunday. I'll anchor our live coverage as the numbers come in and the winners are revealed. Exclusive interviews with the candidates and top analysis of the results. It all starts at 3:30 p.m. UTC. That's 5:30 here in Berlin, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the U.S. And you can contact me anytime with your thoughts on the election. Tweet me at Brent Goff TV, and you can email us as well. agenda.english@dw.de. You see the address right there on your screen. All right, next week on Agenda, Smart Talk on the German election that was. I'm Brent Goff in Berlin. Join me next time when I set the agenda.